So today we're going to discuss the concept of survival when you're on the losing side. This is something they really don't talk about today. Back in the 70s and 80s, during the nuclear preparedness movement, there was a lot of discussion about surviving when you're on the losing side. It doesn't really matter if you're on the losing side of World War III, a nuclear war, a conventional war, a civil war, a chemical attack, a chemical contamination scenario, or a religious war, or you're a victim of wokeness. Because these scenarios, all of us are going to have to face sooner or later. We may face multiple aspects of this. You have to ask yourself, if you're on the losing side, how do you survive? And there's really three main actions which you can choose to do one of, several of, or all of, or do them in a serial manner to ensure your survival. The first thing you have to do is assess the situation and determine whether you're in a viable environment following the loss. Are you in a place in an area where the physical, political, and spiritual environment are such that you can survive? That's the first thing you got to do, is come to a realization of that. And it has to be a realistic finding of your situation. Any inaccuracy in this determination will ensure your failure or death, or both. When we look at this situation, basically, if you're on the losing side, are you in a situation where you're going to be left alone and you can thrive in place with a change in political environment? This is very unlikely, but through history, it has been possible depending on the severity of the conflict. The second one is, do you fight back or continue to fight even after the loss to ensure a future victory? This is something you got to look at, because the survival of your group or your people may dictate that fighting is not a viable option. The third one is leaving the area, leaving the country. So migration is another solution to being on the losing side. And when you look at history, you find that in many cases, a group, family, individuals, or a people in general will have to do all of these things at times in order to survive. You may have to try to coexist until you can actually migrate out of the area. You may have to fight to protect yourself during this period or during the migration. A lot of times a population is more vulnerable when they're migrating than when they're in place fighting. So migration security, methods of migration, which we talked about in the past, lines of drift, things like that are critical to your survival, but rarely included in planning. Now, route selection is critical also. You may find the direct route is not the safe or viable route. You may have to kind of go round and round to get where you want to go, or do multiple jumps into areas that are friendly until the coast is clear. So for instance, you may have to hang out and live in homestead in an area for 4 or 5 years until the situation changes between you and your destination. So these are a few thoughts and rambles in an area rarely discussed. Please share your thoughts. We'll see you on the next video.